equitable distribution of wealth and equitable, growth for men as well as women. In line with that, it appears that pension department has now made fresh changes, and the reform will now allow women pensioners to essentially also be able to nominate their children and not just their spouse. What does it really mean for government servants or pensioners?
Shweta, I think at a ideological level, at a political level, an announcement like this could not have been made in the budget, because that would be in conflict with Election Commission's guidelines that an interim budget cannot disclose or cannot announce schemes where there is a likelihood of voters getting influenced and voting for the incumbent government. So I think the government has taken a very clear step of making this announcement come 2 days, 3 days before the budget. Now, this is pretty much politically in sync with the 3-4 main constituencies that the Modi government is gunning for in this election season. Women being, of course, topmost in that. So, we are looking at women, we are looking at youth, we are looking at poor in general, and we are looking at the agri sector and the farm sector. These are the 4 broad buckets of vote bank that the government, the current incumbent government, wants to go after. Now, coming specifically to this pension reform, so pension rules are very clear all this while that anytime a government employee, a central government employee retires, the pension due to that government employee is 50% of the last drawn salary. So 50% of the last drawn basic salary. Now, on the demise of that pensioner, the emoluments due to the family are cut down to 25%. So now this 25% of the last drawn salary was directly eligible to be paid to the spouse of the deceased. Now, on the demise of the spouse, if the children continue to be minors, then that 25% gets distributed equally among the remaining children of the pensioner's lineage, who would be eligible until they turn the age of 18 years. Right. Now, targeting specifically the women's section of government employees, the government has now taken this very, very conscious decision to say that a woman can choose to nominate her children over her spouse. Right. So, children can become eligible to receive pension either if the pensioner deceases in service or after retirement. So, in either case, if you're in service and you happen to, to not make it and you happen to kick the bucket, your children would be eligible to receive that 50% which would have otherwise gone to your spouse. And by just writing an application, the children could take precedence over the spouse. Now, there are certain terms and conditions in this. One being, if the children are still not majors, if the children are still below 18 and the spouse is the guardian, then the widower, as the case may be, would be eligible to receive that pension on behalf of the children. But once the widower also passes away, the children or whoever is the guardian gets access to the pension. And in the case of special circumstances like children battling, let's say, mental health issues or real medical challenges where they are unable to, they need somebody to give them care, then in those cases these exceptions will kick in where the spouse will get the, the pension due. But I think overall it seems like a great political message that we are sticking to Modi's guarantee, so to speak, of women empowerment, of making women, take the lead, and this being a women-led, not perhaps a women-oriented policy structure in the government, giving women the right to nominate their children instead of their spouse. So I think other issues like dowry, harassment, divorce proceedings, marital discord, all of these get taken care of when the woman can nominate their children to receive pension instead of the spouse.
All right. And since we are on Modi's guarantee, you mentioned there's going to be 4 to 5 buckets that will be the focus areas. Women, of course, will be taken care of through pensions and other schemes that we're likely to see being unveiled in the budget. But then there are other, buckets that we're also hoping announcements would be made to them, specifically youth and poor, as well as farmers. I mean, there is still 2 days to go to budget. It's on the 1st of Feb, so we could see something happening on those fronts as well. Or should we wait for budget and
Shweta,
budgetary announcements?
To my mind, I think it's unlikely that any direct, incentives will be doled out to any section of society, any section of the tax-paying society or the voting part of the country, right? So you will not perhaps see a direct benefit accruing to individuals who are likely to vote. There could be some some indirect measures undertaken. I think one of them could perhaps this year be so employment creation. I think what does the youth want? The youth wants jobs, right?
Jobs,
How
absolutely.
do you give them jobs? One way is, of course, the government jobs which are open. You fill them up with younger people, but I don't think that is going to be enough. That's not going to suffice. So I think one way would be to get corporate India to take in more youth, and to do that, you may have an indirect incentive given by way of, let's say, reduction in corporate taxes. That is something that industry has been demanding, even though it stays at a 25% threshold, unlike a higher slab of 30% for individual taxpayers. But some more money in the hands of corporates could give them the ability, given that we are in a high inflation, high interest rate regime, to be able to ease the pain and get them to either invest and create capital by way of the money saved, or intake more youth and create more jobs. And that is going to be even more evident hopefully this year, whether in the interim budget or in the main budget, because we know that the IT sector, which is a major contributor to India's growth, is facing headwinds from the US, and whatever is happening geopolitically, is likely to exacerbate even more in the current in the next few months and in this upcoming financial year. So I think some incentives to corporate India may see light of the day, if not in the interim budget, then hopefully in the full budget.
All right, and we'll of course have to wait for budget to announce those relief measures, if at all. Remember, this is a vote on account. This is not a full budget.